Yeah, boy.
In the land of mythical lore, there is a king named Odin. And while I do not believe in myths, I do certainly believe that this handheld has been named very much appropriately. This is the AYN Odin 2 Portal. And being that it is a portal, this game handheld certainly transports you into another world, it seems like, when it comes to performance, when it comes to power. This device has the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, which is still one of the most powerful chips on the market and one of the most compatible chips on the market. There has been a massive amount of driver support for this chip. And so this handheld rocks a 7-inch 1080p 120 hertz OLED display, okay, with brightness that is definitely high enough to carry out into the sunlight if you so wish to do so. Okay, the only problem is that this is a very premium handheld. And so you see here that we have this all glass front on it, okay? And the first handheld company that I saw doing the all glass front like this was actually AYN. And so it seems like some of the other handheld companies kind of jumped on board that, and I don't really know the reason why. However, for this device in particular, because this is a premium device and you know it's meant to be a premium device when you hold it in your hands, okay, I'm here for it. Now, I actually purchased a grip for mine, and so you see here I got this nice big TPU grip right here. Okay, this is very comfortable in the hands. Now, even without the grip, okay, this device is still very comfortable in the hands. So before I go any further on this handheld, I do want to go ahead and give you the full specs of this device, okay? And so we have the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, as we've said, 8 cores up to 3.2 gigahertz, running an Adreno 740 GPU, 8 gigs of LPDDR5 RAM, 128 gigs of internal storage. However, you can expand this all the way up to 2 terabytes if you have the money and you're rich like that. I'm currently not quite there right now because I'm spending too much extra money buying extra handhelds to make these videos. So somebody show me some love. Okay, anyways, 7-inch OLED display, 1920 by 1080, 120 hertz, touch screen, operating Android 13 with an 8,000 milliamp hour battery. That is a nice big honking battery. That's the same size one they put in the original Odin 2, okay, which I also had. For connectivity, we have Wi-Fi 7, Bluetooth 5.3. Okay, and we do have active cooling. We've got our Hall effect joysticks right here. Okay, we do have our analog triggers. Okay, our shoulders and triggers up here, nice and big and just, you know, very, very comfortable in the hands. Okay, that cannot be understated how well balanced this handheld is. And the thing is you look at the size of this handheld and you think to yourself, it's almost as big as a Steam Deck. But this is much, much lighter than a Steam Deck, I assure you. However, I don't think anybody can compare with the nice, wonderful controls that the Steam Deck has. Now, for size comparison, though, I do have another handheld that I'm going to be reviewing very soon right here next to this device right now. And so I'm going to sit this one down, or sit off to the side here, kind of. Okay, and let's see here. Back out, back out. All right, this is the Anbernic RG557. Okay, and so if I may, I'm going to put these both down real quick. And I'm going to move the camera for just a second here, folks. So give me just a moment. Bear with me. All right, I want y'all to get a good shot of what this actually looks like side by side. Okay, you can see here, we've got all this real estate extra on the AYN Odin 2 Portal. Now, this device is a 5.5-inch display. Okay, and you can see that the Odin 2 just kind of dwarfs it a little bit. Like, look at that. You sit it over the top of it, and it doesn't even exist. And so if you own an Anbernic RG556, okay, then you will be well aware of the size of this device. And so, that stated, let's get her back up here. All right, I'm not a professional, people. So, let's jump into the other things that this device has on it. Okay, so we have our volume up and down up here, and I can just show you here. See, these little TPU grips that they make, they just come right off. And so we have our SD card slot down here on the bottom, and then we have our headphone jack, which, you know, a lot of people are grateful for, and our charging port, and as well as display out port. Now, this device can output up to 4K, which is absolutely awesome. Okay, because there are handheld emulators on here that you can really beef the resolution up on, like PPSSPP. Okay, you can turn the resolution way up on that. Okay, now, just to give you guys the rundown, okay, we'll do the full suite of retro games just for people that aren't in the know. There's a lot of you watching that probably are in the know, but, you know, there are people out there that are wondering, like, okay, well, what exactly is the big special thing about these Android handhelds? What can it do? So we'll start with Game Boy and just launch into a game real quick. And so look at all the real estate that you have and how it looks like it's just floating above this giant OLED display. So if you ever wanted something really massive to play Game Boy games on, okay, this could be absolutely ideal. So anybody wanting to, you know, mock or make fun, just realize this. A lot of people that come into this hobby, maybe some of the people that are getting into this hobby are older people, and they don't have as good of eyesight as some of the younger guys. And so they can't play on like an Ambernic RG35XX or a Retroid Pocket Classic because the screen might be too small. And so because of that, they're just looking like, man, do y'all have anything with maybe a bigger screen that I can get a hold of? Or, you know, what have you. And so this is very ideal for someone like that. And so jumping out of Game Boy, okay, let's back up. All right, we're going to jump into Game Boy Color, okay, and we have some Road Rash. All right, back in the day, Road Rash was kind of my jam, except I was always more into Road Rash on like the Sega Genesis. And so this Game Boy version of Road Rash is actually pretty awesome. For this to be Game Boy Color from way back in the early 90s, like there's somebody looking at this right now from the newer generation that's like, ugh, you guys played this stuff? And it's like, yeah, this is what we thought was absolutely awesome back in my day. You know, we rode around on motorcycles punching people in this game. And, you know, I'm playing it with the joystick right now, which that's another thing is every game on the Game Boy or any of the older systems, most of them did not have any kind of joystick controls. It was all on a D-pad. It wasn't until, you know, PlayStation and N64 rolled around that the use of joysticks was the, you know, becoming very popular as far as the smaller style joysticks that we have now. Once upon a time, you had things like Atari where they used like full-size arcade joysticks, you know, on their home consoles and stuff. And so backing out of this one, now we're going to jump up another generation to Game Boy Advance. And so let's, oh no, I didn't put a Game Boy Advance on here. I apologize. That's on me, guys. That is absolutely on me. So anyways, I guess we'll jump into Nintendo instead. All right, so we have, and believe you me, if you wanted to see Game Boy Advance, just trust me when I say this device is awesome for that, because the Game Boy Advance is a wider display. And so playing Game Boy Advance games on this, absolutely epic. Definitely something you want, you know, as far as if you're looking for a way to play them in a way that makes them look absolutely amazing, because the colors on this OLED, you know, I don't know if what you're seeing on the screen right now is doing any kind of a justice, but I mean, the colors on this device with this gigantic 7-inch display, okay, I mean, the Steam Deck, okay, it has the OLED model, but the problem with the Steam Deck's OLED is even though it's a slightly larger display, I believe it was like 7.4 inches. They expanded it from the original 7-inch of the original Steam Deck, okay, but the resolution on it was only 800p. And so here you are with a 7-inch display and you're getting a full 1080p. And, you know, the ability to run things like black frame insertion, which is something that other handheld gaming channels have talked about. Okay, you know, absolutely cool. So we're going to go ahead and back out of this real quick and go into the next generation up. We'll go to some Super NES with a ROM hack that someone homebrewed here. Okay, so this is basically somebody got the bright idea in the gaming community to redo Super Mario Land, and redid it on the Super NES. And so this is like one of the absolute coolest of the cool when it comes to ROM hacks. And so if any of you guys have never gotten to play this one, just look up SNES ROM hacks on Google or something, and you can absolutely find this. And it's really cool just seeing them take an older idea and combining it with a newer idea, because the graphic style of this is actually more akin to some of the newer Mario games that you see on like the Switch. If you see Mario's running animation, okay, on the original Super Mario World that came out on the Super Nintendo, okay, Mario's running animation was nothing like this. And so this is way more detailed as far as this goes. And so whoever actually came up with this, shout out to homebrew community, shout out to ROM hack community. You guys are awesome. I can't talk enough about it, because sometimes you get these dreams of what you wish they would have added to a game back in the day, and these guys, it's like whatever you're dreaming up, they've already thought up, and they managed to make these games like this, and it's just absolutely epic. So anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and back out of this one, and we're gonna go to Sega Genesis, and we have Cool Spot. All right. And so anybody who was a big fan of drinking 7-Up back in the day, or maybe you're still a fan of drinking 7-Up, okay, Cool Spot, absolutely a really awesome game. This is one of the absolute first like commercial games that was based on like an actual product that just did not suck. I mean, this game was very, very fun. You kill you get rid of the the enemies with your little magic, whatever this is here. And you see every time you take a hit, the little spot icon up in the top left corner, he just kind of folds over. And, once you get all the way, this is what happens when he finally gets, kicks the bucket. But, anyways, so backing out now, and we'll go up another system if we have any more left. I think I did them all the ones that I've put on here for this particular review. Okay, so that's those. Now we'll go into Nintendo DS. Okay, so this is one of those devices that, because of the real estate of the screen being so big, okay, then having one screen smaller and having one screen bigger doesn't really hurt in this game. And you can resize the screens, or you can get rid of a screen if you want to by tapping L3, R3 here. So you see what I did there. Being able to have DS titles run with a screen this large, especially ones that only require a single screen, this is very, very much ideal. And so this is Bowser's Inside fairy tale, that's what I'll call it. Just in case the Nintendos are watching. But yeah, games like this, and I'm just pushing buttons at this point, but being able to run these games, you can run them with HD on the Drastic app and crank up the resolution. But I mean, once again, look at how this looks on this massive OLED display. You just can't get past how awesome everything looks on this OLED display. And so I'm going to go ahead and jump out of this one real quick, because remember, this is all this video is a review, so no gameplay on this one. I do that whenever I do my retro game of the week that you guys see sometimes. Those of you that actually watch it, I want a lot more people to watch the retro game of the week, honestly, because the games that I'm hunting down are not games that suck. I'm not just putting something out there for the sake of putting it out. These are games that are actually fun. And so here we have, we're gonna call it A Link Between the Realms, okay, with a fairy elf, fairy elf's Link Between Realms, okay. So this game, a true classic. Anybody who's ever played 3DS knows it, and I'm a big fan of this entire series. Just letting you know, I'm a huge fan of this series. I grew up on the OG Legend of Zelda, and by the way, I did not map the controls for this one, so I do apologize for that. I've been doing most of my 3DS emulation either on a tablet or on my Retroid Pocket 5 with a dual screen attachment. That's how I do mine. And the main reason why is because of the OLED display and the fact that I've got two of them at 5.5 inches. I'm sorry, yeah, 5.5 inches. So, but if you're wondering if this device does DS and 3DS, absolutely. And all you have to do is go through and map the controls. That's all I had to do there. I just didn't want to do that for sake of time right now because I have been working a lot of overtime. So, jumping into PlayStation 1, okay, you can beef it all the way up to 1080p or beyond. You know, once again, if you output this to a television set, using the dock that they have or what have you, then you can absolutely have a blast upscaling PS1 games to ridiculous resolutions, because this device is so powerful. I mean, you just can't even believe. Like, this is at 1080p, okay? And remember, this is a PlayStation 1 game, y'all. And seeing it run at 1080p compared to what we had back in the day whenever we were playing this on CRT televisions, the difference is night and day. I mean, the lighting effects, you know. Yeah, you got some pop in because, once again, it was the PlayStation 1. But playing this stuff on an emulator is literally as if like you were playing it on a PlayStation 1 Pro. You know, like if they had the ability to just beef up the graphics or something like that. And then of course you're getting full frame rates. I mean, once again, you know, if you fast forward, see, this is me hitting fast forward. Okay, you have a ridiculous amount of overhead that you can do on these games. And so I'm gonna go ahead and jump out of that now, and we will jump into some PSP. Okay, and for PSP, the game that I've chosen is Lego Batman. I'm a big Lego fan when it comes to the Lego games. Okay, I've beaten Lego Batman 2 and I've beaten the Lego Marvels, and so I just really enjoy the Lego series games. Really awesome as far as I'm concerned. You know, I'm trying to remember if I actually mapped this one or not. Don't think I did. So you guys are going to get to see real quick if there's anyone watching that doesn't know how to. Okay, you can beef the resolution up. So I'm going to go in here to my settings for graphics, and I'm going to beef the resolution up to 4 times. Okay, because that's 1080p and that's the maximum resolution of this display. So there's really no need in going any further than that. But once again, if you output this device, okay, if you output this to a big screen TV, okay, being able to beef up PSP games into like 4K territory, I mean, you cannot just... I've done it a couple of times with a few different games. I did it with Parasite Eve, Third Birthday, which is another PSP title, and also some of the other more action-heavy games like your Call of Duty type games, Brothers in Arms, that sort of stuff. Okay, the stuff that you can do with this device is just out of this world. Okay, so now we can go back and do our game real quick. All right, continue, and we're gonna go ahead and get started on that. Blah blah blah. Now I'm gonna hit fast forward, and we're just fast forwarding through the cutscene. Look at how quickly I'm fast forwarding everything. Fast forwarding. This amount of overhead. Once again, if you're the kind of person that just doesn't like to watch cutscenes and you just want to skip through them on most of these systems, then this is definitely that device, because there's so much overhead that the amount of frames that you can fast forward it with a device like this. Look at me, just zoom. I mean, it's nuts. So well, let's see how fast we can make Batman run. All right, ready, go. So anyway, and look at how wonderful all the colors pop on this game. I mean, you know, it's one of these things. Like, I had somebody on the street ask me just the other day. They're like, you know, which system do you recommend? You know, if I just want to do it all. And, you know, everybody's standard answer is like, well, just get a Steam Deck. Okay, but we have gotten to the point now where we're getting so good with our PC emulation that, you know, we can play PC games, and we can run a lot of them at 1080p, believe it or not. And so being able to run PC games with WinLater, Game Native, Game Hub, all these new emulators that are coming out, Okay, that is also another area where we're just like, man, we're so blessed for choice with the things that we can do nowadays. Okay, now I left this one in 4x3. The N64 was a 4x3 system. And, you know, honestly, with a screen this size, it still looks good because the OLED, once again, it just makes it look like it's floating above the screen, especially if you're not playing in like a well-lit environment. If you're playing in bed or something, then this is plenty for you to look at, okay? So this game is Top Gear Overdrive, and I grew up playing this game. And so I have to show you, okay, not every single game is going to emulate perfectly, no matter how strong of a chipset you get. Okay, there's always going to be outliers. And so I picked this game on purpose to show you that. Now, I will say that this looks a lot better than it does on lower end hardware. On lower end hardware, the car select screen will actually not even show. Okay, like when I tried to do this same game on my Retroid Pocket or something like that, then, you know, it just doesn't even show. But, you know, you see the amount of artifacting here and everything that we got going on the screen, okay? Like I said, this is all just simply to show you guys that not everything is going to emulate perfectly. And because the Mupen 64 app is nothing like the PlayStation 2 app, okay, you don't get to change the rendering or anything like that. You can change it to the Rice Core, I believe it is called, or you can change it to Parallel. So there are workarounds to make certain games appear as they should, but you know, you would have to do that on an individual game basis. And so for me, I'm just going to keep what I got. Okay, now every other N64 game that I've played, as far as things like Mario Golf, you know, that's another one that's got some weird graphical glitches, but that's because of the emulator. That's not because of the power of this device. But another game that doesn't emulate well for the N64 is Waylay Golf. And depending on what handheld you've got, Kirby's Crystal Shards also doesn't emulate very well. But if you wanted to play Super Mario 64, or if you want to play Cruisin' USA, then yeah, those games are absolutely going to emulate well. Those are some of the more optimized games, even though they are. Cruisin' USA is one of the harder games to run. But for this handheld in particular, it runs at full speed with absolutely no breaking of a sweat or anything. Okay, and so moving over to GameCube. All right, whoopsie daisers. Give me a second here. Got to go into my settings here and go into my GameCube folder that I created, and I put Twilight Princess on here. Okay, and so here on the GameCube we have the Legend of that princess lady, Twilight Princess, and as you can see here, once again, another game that is running absolutely beautifully. Okay, and so and by the way, guys, you know, I see a lot of people that like to show off Wind Waker. You know, I get tired of seeing the same videos pop up in a lot of these emulation testing videos. And so whenever I go to choose games, I want to choose things that people are not watching over and over and over again. It's like, oh, they're going to test God of War. Oh, they're going to test Contra. And once again, that's no knock, because these guys have built their brand. They built their channel on, you know, these different things. But me, like I said, I just want to show you guys different things. Okay, like what I did with the N64 a second ago when I showed you that Top Gear Rally Overdrive does not exactly run the best on this device. And once again, it has nothing to do with the power of the device. It has everything to do with the fact that, you know, not every single thing is optimized for a Snapdragon chipset. Some things will absolutely 110% run better on a Mali chipset. It's all about compatibility. You know, someone asked a long time ago, should I get the Retroid Pocket 4 or the Retroid Pocket 5? I told them, get both. Get both. And the reason why I said get both is because of the fact that one game might not render as well as it does on another device. When I went to play The Getaway on PlayStation 2, okay, that's an example I've used before. When I went to play The Getaway on a Mali device, I didn't see any graphical artifacting. But when I went to play it on a Snapdragon device, there was graphical artifacting, and you have to change some things in the Nether SX2 options and whatnot. And so, anyways, we're going to go ahead and jump out of this system now, and we're going to go ahead and jump into PlayStation 2. And for PS2, I chose to show you guys Shaolin Monks, and I already have a save state for that, so we're just going to jump into my save state. Okay. Oh, hold on. Give me a second here. Okay, load state. There we go. All right, so this is running at a full 1080p. And I did stretch it out to widescreen. When it comes to PlayStation 2, I stretch most games out to widescreen, even if there's no option within the game to stretch it out to widescreen. But what happens is if you set the emulator itself to 16:9, and you find a game that has a 16:9 setting in it, like God of War does, for example, and you set the in-game setting to 16:9, then it will narrow back down the characters on screen, even though you're keeping the 16:9 aspect ratio. And so it'll make everybody look like they didn't gain 50 to 100 pounds. And so that's always really, really nice. So I'm going to go ahead and fast forward a little bit. Okay, but as you can see here, absolutely full speed. This is a harder to emulate PS2 game on some lower end hardware. Like I tried back in the day, I tried to run this on my Retroid Pocket 3 Plus back in the day, and I had to finagle a lot of settings to get it to run at a decent frame rate. And plus, depending on, we were running it on Aether SX2 back then, and so you really couldn't get all of the juice out of it depending on which version of Aether you were using. If you were using the 4248 build, it might have been slower. The 3668 build might have been faster. And that was all dependent upon which game you were playing as well. That's something that Russ on Retro Game Cores pointed out with Sly Cooper, is the fact that the, I believe it's the 3668 build runs Sly Cooper faster than the 4248 build when it comes to using just Ether, if you're not using Nether. Okay. But as you can see, once again, this is a full 1080p. This game is running flawlessly. And you know, once again, if you're doing video out, you can upscale it even further. You just go up here into your settings, you go into your graphics, you go where it says upscale multiplier, and you see here, you can go up to 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times. I mean, you know, you can get, you see here, you have options for Ultra HD, 4K, 5K, 6K. Okay, I haven't seen anybody running anything at 6K. I've never even seen a 6K television. I'm not rich. Okay. But yeah, there's your PS2. Okay, now we'll jump into, what have we not tested out yet? We will jump into some Frintendo glitch. So now we have some Frintendo glitch emulation, and this is Borderlands, the pre-sequel. Okay, and as you can see here, this is using the Eden emulator, by the way. I am running a full 30 frames per second, okay? Now, a lot of people laugh and scoff at 30 frames a second. Okay, I come from a generation where we were happy if we had 15 frames a second, okay? So, yeah, I don't even care. All right, so anyway, this series of games right here is very similar to, I would say this game is like a crisscross between Bulletstorm, Duke of Switch, and, you know, like meets Fallout or something. And so, very, very cool. Very, very interesting graphic style, art style, whatever you want to call it, okay? I believe that a game like this, because of the art style, probably could have ran back on like the PS2 or something. And so, anyways, just showing you guys that 110% yes, this device is very Switch capable, okay? And also, let's get into the whole Game Hub thing here. All right, so on Game Hub, I have here, this is Rise of the Tomb Raider, and this game is absolutely awesome. I'm a huge Tomb Raider fan. Okay, I started playing Tomb Raider games back on PS2. Other people started way back on PS1. I really tried to get down into the PS1 era of Tomb Raider games, and it just was not happening for me. And the reason it wasn't happening for me is because the controls were just too laggy, and I just absolutely could not deal with that. It was just a hot mess to me. Definitely not my cup of tea. So when I jumped in on PlayStation 2, playing games like Tomb Raider Anniversary, and then I played Tomb Raider Legend, And then, all the PlayStation 2 Switch games were awesome. I'm sorry, all the PlayStation 2 Tomb Raider games were absolutely awesome, with the exception of Angel of Darkness. Angel of Darkness looked beautiful graphically, but somewhere along the lines, somebody really, really messed up when it came down to the controls, because it went back to, I felt like I was taking a trip all the way back to the PS1 with the controls because of just how laggy that they were. It was just absolutely absurd to me that, I'm like, man, you guys did it right for 3 other games on the PlayStation 2. You guys nailed it. And then here you are, you've got one of the most engaging storylines, but yet you've really just managed to mess the pooch here, so to speak, and that's the nicest way I could think to put it and keep it PG. But so then whenever I found out about PC emulation using GameHub and WinLater, it was WinLater first, and I was actually doing really, really good on WinLater. Okay, but then GameHub came out, and what I love about GameHub is the fact that once you actually install a game on GameHub, it will launch into the settings for you as far as like how to get the game to run. Most of the time, there are default settings for a lot of these games that make it run as optimized as you can possibly get it. And so, when I found that out, I was super happy, because I'm like, this is awesome. I'm not going to have to do as much tinkering. Now, little did I know that in order to get some of the more demanding games that I was going to want to play running, that yes, I 110% was going to have to do some tinkering. I like zombie shooters, and so you had the games like Dead Island. And, being able to run that one, you do have to do a little bit of finagling if you want to be able to get that one to run. But nonetheless, you can get it to run, and you can get it to run at a decent frame rate. And what's crazy about this is, guys, you have to remember, the model that I'm using right now, okay, is the 8 gig base model of the Odin 2 Portal, okay? You can get this thing with up to 16 gigs of RAM, and you can absolutely 110% eke out better performance, okay? Like, I had an Odin 2, not a Odin 2 Portal, but I had an Odin 2 Max at one point. And when I was playing these games on it, okay, the settings and things like that, you were absolutely able to take advantage of that extra RAM. And so it paid off. It worked dividends. And so, the thing I love about the Tomb Raider games, by the way, other than, the fact that Lara Croft is just a really cool character, is the fact that it reminds me so much of the Uncharted series. And I believe that Uncharted kind of just took a male protagonist and then copy-pasted, what they were seeing with Tomb Raider, and said, we can do that, but we can make it a little bit more action-packed or whatever. And so, I 110% really, really appreciate what they did with that series and this series. Big fan of action-adventure, if you can't tell. So, anyways, getting out of... I'm going to go ahead and jump out of this now. And give me a second. Exit. Confirm. Okay. So, what do I think about this handheld? I think that if you are literally trying to do one and done... for the most part, okay, and you're someone that doesn't require 60 frames a second 4K PC gaming emulation, and you just want to play some action adventure games from back in the day, maybe some indies, and you want to play all your favorite retro systems through the PS2 and Gamecube era, I think that this handheld in particular, even at current prices, is well worth it. To me, setting up Android, for me personally, because I've had Android phones my whole life, is 110% easier than setting up a Steam Deck. Okay, I had to watch videos and go through walkthroughs to set up the Steam Deck, okay? Like, I think a lot of people went through that frustration when the Steam Deck was initially launched, to the point that it just kind of got upsetting. And so, this handheld right here, okay, takes care of all of my at-home gaming. Oh, one more thing. Let's not forget about Android gaming. Okay, they are releasing AAA titles now on Android, okay? Give me a second here. Okay, this right here is RDR. Okay, and this is the Android version that they have made. Okay, if you didn't want to have to deal with turnip drivers trying to run this through Switch emulation, or you didn't want to have to deal with, you know, trying to run FX settings or you know, things like that on Game Hub or WinLater, then you know you get into this on the Android version here, and it is 110% a direct copy paste of the console version. And when you already have the built-in controls and you not have to play on a touch screen controls and stuff like that, I mean, you know, I mean, you just look at this stuff and look at me. I mean, just look at me. Okay, this is absolutely amazing. This is perfect. And so the more that they bring AAA games to Android, the more and more that people are going to want devices like this one right here that can run literally almost everything that you can throw at it. And so the Odin Portal, for me personally, gets a huge thumbs up when it comes to its capabilities, its form factor, its comfortability, and I recommend you get a case for it though, you know, obviously, because you will break it. But being able to do video out, get a Bluetooth controller. If you're running out of storage space on the internal storage, get an SD card. If you want even more storage, then just take and plug in a portable hard drive into the bottom of this device through the Type-C port, and you can sit there and you can play 5 terabytes worth of games, 10 terabytes worth of games. Okay, the possibilities are absolutely endless. So anyways, all that to say this, you know, I'm a big fan of this device. I'm Josh the Fifth Wheel Gamer, and I really hope that this did this device a justice today. And so if you like this kind of content, then please like, subscribe, share my videos. And like I said, next up, we're going to have this device right here. This one's my next review. This is going to be for the Anbernic RG557. And so, but until then, I'll catch you guys on the flippity later on.